Okay, hi semua. Okay, now we will go into the second topic, the topic of ecology. This will be the first part concerning the ecosystem concept, in which we just have to know that the ecosystem is actually a community consisting of the living organisms and also the non-living physical environments. Okay, together with the interactions between the living organisms and also the interactions between the non-living environment with the living organisms. Okay, so basically we can see that the ecosystem consists of three components. Okay, the biotic component, number one. Number two will be the abiotic component, and number three will be the interactions, okay, between these two. And since the ecosystem involves living organisms, energy will be very important. So we need to understand that in an ecosystem, the energy will flow, the energy will be transferred from one living organism to another living organism. And in a particular ecosystem, we also need to know that there will be nutrients that will be moving from the environment into the living organisms, and then from the living organisms the nutrients will be returned back to the environment. So this movement of the nutrients will be in the form of cycles, and we call it as the biogeochemical cycles. And first we will look at the biotic components, the components consisting of all the living organisms. And so we just try to divide the living organisms into two major types. The first type will be the autotrophs. So I guess you know by now that the autotrophs are referring to the organisms that are able to produce their own organic compound. Okay, that's why they are also known as the producers. And there are two types of autotrophs that we need to know. The first one will be the photoautotrophs, in which these organisms will be able to produce their own organic compound through the process of photosynthesis, in which they will produce their organic material by using the light energy. So that's where the term photo comes from. Okay, light. So example of the phototroph will be the green plants under the kingdom of Plantae, and maybe some organisms such as the algae, and also some type of protozoa. Okay, and the second type will be the chemoautotrophs, in which these organisms will be producing their own organic compound through some type of chemical processes. So that's why the word chemo here can be found. Okay, due to the chemical processes. And examples of the chemoautotroph will be some type of bacteria. Okay, and the second major type of living organisms will be the heterotrophs. So this group will be referring to the organisms that cannot make their own organic compound from inorganic raw material, and so they need to consume. They need to get their organic material, okay, from some other living organism. So they consume some other things. So that's why the heterotrophs can also be known as the consumers. And under this group of heterotrophs, we can divide into five major groups. The first one will be the herbivores. The first one will be the herbivores, in which we all should know that this will be referring to organisms that eat only plant materials. Okay, and examples will be the rabbits, the mouse deer, the tapir, and some other things. Okay, and the second group will be the carnivores. We should know that this will be referring to the organisms that eat meat only, and example will be the tiger, the lion, even the snake or the eagles. Okay, and the third one will be the omnivores. Omnivores will be referring to organisms that can eat both plant sources or maybe meat. Okay, so they can be referred as the combination of these two. So examples of the omnivores will be some say monkeys, and some say the bears. Bears are also omnivores. The fourth type of heterotrophs will be the detritivores. Okay, this will be referring to organisms that will get their nutrients, their organic compound, from dead matters. Examples of the detritivores will be the earthworm. Okay, because the earthworm eat or consume dead leaves, okay, dry leaves, okay, which are considered as a dead an example of dead matter. Okay, so the dead leaves, okay, are also known as the detritus. So detritivores will be organisms that consume detritus. Okay, and another group will be the decomposers. This will be the group of organisms that will break down organic compound into inorganic raw material. Okay, so examples of the decomposers will be the bacteria and also the fungi. Okay, so this will be all the major groups of the living organisms. Okay, now we go to the second component of the ecosystem, and this will be the non-living environmental factors. Okay, we call them as the abiotic components. So there will be three major types of the abiotic components. The first one will be the atmosphere. This will be referring to the layer of air surrounding the earth. Okay, meanwhile the second type will be the hydrosphere. This will be referring to the layer of water that is found on earth. And so we can also divide this hydrosphere into two main types, the salt water, example with the ocean, and also the fresh water, example with the river or the lake or the pond. Okay, and the third type of the abiotic component will be lithosphere. This will be referring to the layer of soil or sediments on the earth outer layer. Okay, so of course these abiotic components will be interacting, will have some sort of an interaction with the living organisms, in which we can say that the abiotic components, either the atmosphere, the hydrosphere or the lithosphere, will have an influence on the growth or distribution of the plant and animals communities in the ecosystem. For example, the atmosphere will be important to provide carbon dioxide to the plants. Okay, the atmosphere is also important to provide oxygen to the animals. Okay, meanwhile, the hydrosphere will provide habitats for the fish, the prawns, the crabs, and so on. Okay, meanwhile the lithosphere will provide the habitats for the earthworm, for the termites, and so on. Okay, so we can see the interaction between the abiotic component with the biotic component. I will now go about the interactions between the biotic components, the interactions between the living organism itself. Actually, there are two types of interactions between the living organisms. The first one will be the intra-specific interaction, in which this will be referring to the interaction between individuals, of one same species. Okay, the intra-specific interaction. But I will focus now on the interspecific interaction, the second type. Okay, in which the interspecific interaction will be the interaction between two different species. Okay, inter means between, specific here means referring to the word species. So this is the type of interaction between two different species. And we will now go to these types of interspecific interactions. Okay, the first one will be competition. This is a type of negative type of interaction in which both species will have some losses, okay, kerugian. For example, will be the competition between these two species of paramecium caudatum, okay, versus paramecium aurelia. Okay, you can search for this in the internet. Okay, these two species of paramecium can compete with each other when both of them are cultured together in one same container. So these two species of paramecium will compete in order to get the same type of nutrients, for example. Okay, and it will be negative type of interaction, because when these two species are competing with each other, they will use a lot of their energy and their natural resources in order to win in this competition. Alright, we will now go to another type of interaction, the second type, and this will be the predation. Predation is the interaction between the predator and the prey. Okay, the predator is usually larger in size, meanwhile the prey will be smaller in size. Okay, and normally the predator will chase and will catch the prey and will kill the prey to get its food. So in this particular type of interaction, we call it as a positive negative type of the interaction, because normally one species will get benefit, normally the predator, meanwhile the prey will not get any good result at all, especially when they are killed. Okay, another type of interaction that is also showing this positive negative type of interaction will be parasitism. Okay, parasitism. In this type of interaction, it will be between the parasite and the host. Okay, and so the difference is that the parasite will be smaller in size, meanwhile the host will be larger in size. And in this parasitism, the parasite will get the benefit, okay, and the host will be losing a lot of the nutrients from the body. Okay, and so we will now go into another type of interaction, and this will be the mutualism. Okay, mutualism is a type of interaction which is considered as positive type. Okay, why? Because in this interaction, both species will get benefit, both species will get good effect. Okay, one popular example will be this lichen. Okay, lichen is said to be showing the mutualism type of interaction, in which lichen is actually a combination of fungi and also a type of algae. Okay, you might find in notes we say that lichen is a combination of fungi and the blue-green algae, the cyanobacteria. Okay, so in this particular type of interaction, the fungi will get nutrients from the algae, meanwhile the algae will get protection from the fungi. Okay, because the algae will be able to live between the hyphae of the fungi. So we say that both species will get benefits from this type of interaction. And another one Another one will be the commensalism. This is a type of interaction which is showing a positive and zero type of interaction. Okay, why? Because one species will get benefit, meanwhile the other species will not be affected at all. Okay, so a very popular example for this commensalism will be between the shark and also the remora fish. Okay, the remora fish, in which the remora fish will attach itself on the body of the shark, and the remora fish will get free transport. Okay, meanwhile the shark will have no effect at all. So this will be the different types of interspecific interaction that we can discuss. So we will now go into another part for this subtopic of 2.1, and this will be about some examples of the ecosystem. Okay, and the first example of ecosystem that we should know will be the lake ecosystem. And when we talk about the lake ecosystem, it is very important for us to divide the lake into several zones. So we need to talk about the lake zonation, the zones of the lake. Okay, we can divide the lake based on the light penetration, or we can also divide the lake in terms of the distance from the shore, from the lake shore. So if we divide the lake based on this penetration of light, we can divide into these two layers over here. The upper layer will be known as the photic zone. This is the layer of the lake in which light can penetrate. Meanwhile, the layer at the bottom here will be known as the aphotic zone. This will be the zone of the lake that will not be able to get any light. So light cannot penetrate into this layer over here. So it will be darker, of course. Okay, the photic zone and the aphotic zone down here. Okay, and if we divide the lake based on the distance from the lake shore, we will be able to see that the first one will be the littoral zone. The littoral zone is actually referring to the area close to the lake shore. Okay, close to the lake shore. It is more shallow. Okay, tak dalam, titik saja. And further away from the lake shore, towards the middle of the lake will be the limnatic zone. So this will be referring to the area in the middle of the lake. Okay. Apart from these four zones that we have mentioned just now, photic zone, aphotic zone, littoral zone, and limnatic zone, there is another zone that we can also observe in the lake ecosystem, and this will be the benthic zone. The benthic zone is actually referring to the area at the bottom of the lake. Okay. So from this table, you can see the zones of the lake, and the photic zone, the aphotic zone, the littoral zone, the limnatic zone, together with the benthic zone, and you can see the description of each zone. Okay, and also examples of living organisms that can be found in each of the different zones. Okay. Now we will go into another example of the ecosystem, and this is a type of terrestrial ecosystem. Terrestrial means the ecosystem that we can observe on land. Okay, and the example of a terrestrial ecosystem will be the tropical rainforest. This is important because the tropical rainforest is the important type of ecosystem for Malaysia. Okay. And we should know that the tropical rainforest is an area which get a lot of rain throughout the year. Okay, and so the forest will be very thick with vegetation, and of course there will be many types of animals as well. Okay, and normally when we look at the tropical rainforest, we can divide the forest into several layers. Okay, or we can say that we will talk about the forest stratification. Okay, the layer of forest, the layers of forest. So here we can see there are five layers for the forest. Okay, starting from this bottom part of the forest, which we call as the ground layer or the forest floor. Okay, further up will be the shrub layer. Okay, and then the understory, and then the canopy, and the highest layer will be the emergent layer. So this will be the 5 layers of the tropical rainforest. And we should know that different types of animals will be found on these different layers of the forest, together with the different types of vegetation, different types of plants. Okay, this is an example of the tropical rainforest found in Brazil, maybe, because we can see the Brazilian tapir over here. Okay, but for Malaysia, the condition is very similar, very similar. So for Malaysian context, maybe we can look at this table, in which for the forest floor, one example of vegetation, one example of plants that can be found on the forest floor will be the mosses, the polytrichum species. Okay, and this will be examples of animals that we can usually find on the forest floor: the ants, the millipedes, the centipedes, and so on. Okay, the shrub layer is the layer of forest that we can normally find the ferns. Example will be the directories species. Meanwhile, animals such as tapirs, the tapirs, and certain reptiles can be found in the shrub layer as well. Okay. Meanwhile, the understory will be higher. Example of plant that can be found in the understory layer will be the hibiscus rosacelensis and the bunga raya. Meanwhile, the example of animals will be the squirrels, okay, and honeybees. Meanwhile, further up will be the canopy layer. Okay, that will be referred as the roof of the forest. Okay, the canopy is sometimes referred as the roof of the forest. Okay, example will be this tall plants. Example will be the rambutan tree and the Nephilium species. And example of animals that can be found in the canopy layer will be the toucans. Or if we look at the Malaysian forest, examples of toucans will be the burung enggang, okay, the hornbill, the hornbill. That is actually the Malaysian version of the toucans, okay, and also monkeys, which can normally be found climbing the tall trees. Okay, higher, okay, taller than the canopy layer will be the emergent layer. Okay, higher than the canopy layer will be the emergent layer, in which the trees will be taller than the usual ones. Okay, and these very tall trees will emerge from the canopy layer, and so we can see them protruding from the canopy layer. So example of the plants that is normally found in the emergent layer will be this very tall plant, okay, known as the tualang tree. The tualang. This is said to be the tallest tree in Malaysia. Okay, pokok tualang. And examples of the animals that can be found in the emergent layer will be the eagles. Okay. And so we have settled this subtopic of 2.1. Okay, and we will continue with the subtopic of 2.2 now. Okay, I will start now with the energy flow, in which initially energy will come from the sun. And the sun is said to be the primary source of energy. Okay, uh, but we need to know by now that the energy from the sun will be absorbed, will be captured, or will be trapped by the plants when they perform the process of photosynthesis. So from the plants, okay, the energy will be transferred, okay, to another living organism, to another living organism, and to another living organisms. Okay, so from the plants, the energy will be transferred to different types of animals, and usually energy will be lost to the environment, to the atmosphere, okay, in the form of heat energy. Okay, and so as the energy can be lost to the atmosphere, the level of energy, the amount of energy will definitely decrease. Okay, when the energy is being transferred from one organism to another organism, to another organism, to another organism, okay, energy will be lost, and so the amount of energy will decrease. Okay, and the energy cannot be recycled. Why? Because the amount of energy will be very, very little, okay, over here. So it cannot be recycled again to the plants. In fact, in order for the plants to get more energy, the plants need to absorb the energy from the sun all over again. Okay. And so, talking about this transfer of energy, we need to talk about the food chain. Okay, the food chain, in which this shows the transfer of energy from the producer, from the primary producer, through the herbivores, which eat the plants, and then to the carnivores, which referring to the animals that eat other animals, and eventually the energy can be transferred to the decomposers. Okay, so this will be an example of a particular food chain. This is a terrestrial food chain, a type of food chain that can be found on land, starting from the plant. Okay, you must remember that we don't start the food chain from the sun. We never start the food chain from the sun. Instead, we start the food chain with the producer, the autotroph. Okay, so example here will be a type of plant, and then the energy from the plant will be transferred to this herbivore. Example will be this grasshopper. Okay, and then when the grasshopper is eaten by this rat, okay, a type of carnivore, the energy will be transferred to the rat. And if the rat is being eaten by a snake, then the energy from the rat will be transferred to the snake. And if the snake is eaten by an eagle, okay, another carnivore, the energy from the snake will be transferred to this particular animal. Okay, this is another type of food chain, a marine food chain. Okay, a type of food chain that can be observed in the sea. Okay, we start with the phytoplankton. Okay, because phytoplankton is a type of organism that produce their own organic material. They are autotroph organisms. So the energy from the phytoplankton can be transferred to another type of plankton, okay, the zooplankton. Okay, and the zooplankton can transfer their energy to the fish when the fish consume this zooplankton, and so on. Okay, and so from this food chains, you can see that normally we will start with the primary producer. Okay, and this energy will be transferred to the primary consumer, normally the herbivores. The primary consumer is usually referring to the herbivores, and then this will be followed by the secondary consumer, which normally involve the carnivores, and so on. Okay, all this will be the carnivores. There are two types of food chains that we need to know. One will be the grazing food chain, and the second one will be the detritus food chain. Okay, we will talk about the grazing food chain now, in which the grazing food chain can be further divided into two types: the predatory food chain and the parasitic food chain. This is the predatory food chain, in which in this food chain we will start with the producer, example the grass, Okay, and the grass will be eaten by the grasshopper, the herbivore, the primary consumer, and the grasshopper will then be eaten by the frog, which will then be eaten by the snake, which can be eaten by the owl. So a predatory food chain is basically a food chain that involves predators. Okay, over here, the frog is a type of predator, the snake is another type of predator, and the owl is another type of predator. Okay, and so this is different from the second type of the grazing food chain, in which the second one will be the parasitic food chain. So what's the difference? As you notice, the parasitic food chain also start with the producers, example the grass, okay, and then this will be followed by the herbivores, the primary consumer, example will be the cow, okay, but then there will be parasites that will get nutrients from the primary consumer, example will be the lice. Okay, so the lice will be the parasite that will get nutrients from the cow. So since parasite is involved in this particular food chain, we call this food chain as the parasitic food chain. Okay, no predator involved over here. Okay, and so we will now continue with the second type of food chain, and that will be the detritus food chain. Okay, the second one, the detritus food chain. In this particular food chain, we start with the detritus. What is the detritus? Detritus is the dead matter, benda-benda mati. Example will be the leaf litter, okay, the dry leaves, the dead leaves, okay, and this detritus will be consumed, will be eaten by the detritivore. Example will be the earthworm. Okay, so since we start the food chain not with the producer, okay, not with the green plants, okay, instead we start the food chain with the detritus, the dead matter. That is why we call it as the detritus food chain. Okay, another difference is that the second trophic level, the second trophic level will be the detritivore. This is different from the grazing food chain. For the grazing food chain, the second trophic level consists of the herbivore, but as you can see here, the detritivore will be positioned at the second trophic level. Okay, and of course the earthworm can be eaten by this small bird, and this small bird can then be eaten by another larger bird. Okay, even though predators are involved over here, but we call this as the detritus food chain because this involves detritus as the source of energy. Okay, and so we have discussed about the different types of food chains just now, okay, in which we start with the producer, okay, at the first trophic level, and then the primary consumer will be at the trophic level number 2, and this will be followed by the trophic level number 3 and trophic level number 4. And it is said that a food chain is usually consists of not more than 5 trophic levels. Okay, usually 5 or less. Okay, 5 or less lah. The best one is 4 trophic levels only. The best one. Okay. Why is this so? Why there should not be more than 5 trophic levels for a particular food chain? Okay, because energy will become less and less when it being transferred from one trophic level to another trophic level to another trophic level. Okay, why? Because energy will be lost. Okay, lost through the process of transpiration from the plants, lost in the form of respiration, okay, from the animals, excretion of the animals, or maybe death of the organism, or maybe energy can be lost in the form of heat to the environment. Okay, so as a result, the energy that is left at the fourth trophic level is very little. Okay, the energy that is at the fourth trophic level is not sufficient, not enough to support the animal at the trophic level number 5. Okay, and so that is why we say that the more levels in the food chain, okay, the more unstable it will become. Okay, and so normally it will be 4, or the maximum number will be 5, and that's it. Okay, not more than 5. Okay, and another type of relationship between the organisms in terms of their feeding mode will be the food web. Okay, so we have talked about the food chain. Now it will be the food web. The food web is actually a large complex network of interconnected food chains. So we can see here there is one food chain, okay, starting from the grass, okay, to this rat and to this owl. This is one food chain. Okay, another food chain is that the grass can be eaten by this rat, and the rat can be eaten by the snake, and the snake can also be eaten by this owl. So there will be many food chains that are interconnected with each other, and this will be producing a food web. Okay, a more complex type of food relationship between these living organisms. A food web is considered as a more stable type of feeding relationship between the living organisms. Okay, why? Because when there is a food web in an ecosystem, this will ensure that the living organisms will be able to get their food even when one particular source is not available. Okay, for example, this owl can still survive even when there are no rats around. Why? Because the owl can get its food from the snake. The owl can also get its nutrient from this grasshopper or from this animal, and so on. So we can see that with the food web, there will be many options for this particular animal to get its foods, okay, to get its food. Okay, so that is why a food web will be producing a more stable type of ecosystem. Okay, a feeding relationship can also be shown by these ecological pyramids. Okay, it is actually a diagrammatic representation of a feeding relationship, and we can also see how energy can be transferred, okay, from one organism to another organism, okay, in a particular food chain. So there are 3 types of ecological pyramid that we have to know: the pyramid of number, the pyramid of biomass, and also the pyramid of energy. Usually, when we need to describe a particular ecological pyramid, we will use boxes like this, in which these boxes will show the organisms in one particular food chain. Okay, in which the box at the bottom part will be referring to the organisms at the first trophic level. Okay, the second box here will be referring to the animals or the organisms at the second trophic level. This one over here will be referring to the animals in the third trophic level, and so on. Okay, we will start now with the pyramid of numbers, in which in this diagrammatic representation we will see the number of organisms that occupy each trophic levels in a food chain. Okay, usually when the pyramid ascends, the number of organisms will decrease. For example, okay, in this particular food chain, we will be able to see that the number of the producers will be a lot. Okay, this is shown by the first box over here. The second trophic level will be showing less number of organisms, okay, and so on. Okay, for example, there will be many grasses, okay, eaten by this let's say grasshopper, okay, and this grasshopper can be eaten by the small birds maybe, okay, and the small birds can be eaten maybe by the eagle, a larger type of bird, okay. So usually the number of eagles will be very few compared to the small birds, compared to the grasshoppers, and of course the number of the grasses will be a lot more lah, okay. So this shows a type of pyramid, okay, and since the pyramid here shows the number of organisms, so we call it as the pyramid of number. Sometimes the pyramid of number can be inverted, okay, especially if the food chain involves parasites. For example, okay, this is a type of an inverted pyramid of number, in which the number of parasite is usually more than the number of the hosts. So that is why the box here will be bigger, larger than the box for the second trophy level. The second type of ecological pyramid will be the pyramid of biomass, in which this is a diagrammatic representation of the total biomass in each of the trophic levels of the food chain. Okay, so basically we don't talk about the numbers anymore, but we talk about the mass of these plants, the mass of the mice, the mass of the snakes, and the mass of the eagles in this particular food chain. And this pyramid of biomass can be inverted sometimes, okay, especially if the mass of the organism over here is more than the mass of the organisms over here, okay. And the third type of the ecological pyramid will be the pyramid of energy. In this particular type of pyramid, we will be able to see the level of energy, the amount of energy at each trophic level of a food chain. For example, we can see here that the amount of energy for the producers will be about 10,000 joule, okay, but the amount of energy for the grasshoppers over here will be about 1,000 joule. And what about the energy for the rats, and what about the energy for the snakes? So we can see that the amount of energy will be decreasing, and that is why the pyramid of energy can never be inverted, meaning that the level of energy over here cannot be more than the amount of energy over here, okay, because the energy will be decreasing as the trophic level increases from the first trophic level to the second trophic level to the third trophic level and the fourth trophic level, okay. And sometimes we need to be able to calculate how much energy is being transferred from one organism to another organism. So if you look at this particular diagram, we can see that there will be this amount of energy in the plants or the producer, okay, but then the amount of energy for the herbivore will be less than that, and the amount of energy will be even decreasing as the profit level increase to the next one. So if we need to calculate how much energy is being transferred from one profit level to another profit level, we can try to do like this. Okay, for example, if we need to calculate the percentage of energy that is being transferred from this primary consumer, the herbivore, to the secondary consumer over here, the carnivore. So it will be 1600 kilojoule divide with the 14,000 kilojoule, okay, that will be the amount of energy of the herbivore, and we just time with 100, and so the percentage of energy being transferred from the herbivore to the carnivore is only about 11.4%. Not very high. Okay, they say that normally the amount of energy is about 10% only, about 10%. Okay, not more, not very much actually. Okay, and sometimes you need to also be able to calculate how much energy is being lost. Okay, from one profit level to another profit level. Okay, so if you need to calculate how much energy is being lost, okay, from the primary consumer to the secondary consumer, so this is the method. 14,000 minus 1,600. Okay, and you divide with the amount of energy of the primary consumer over here, then you time with 100, and we can see that a lot of energy is being lost, okay, between this profit level number 2 and the profit level number 3 over here. 88.6% of energy is being lost. Okay, maybe in the form of heat energy, maybe in the form of respiration, maybe through the process of excretion and so on. Right, and so maybe after this you can try to do some questions involving this type of calculation. Okay, if you try to look at the tutorial questions, you can find these questions. Okay, essay questions number 1 and 2 will be about this subtopic of 2.1 and 2.2. And I would like to start with this essay question number 2B. Essay question number 2B will be about the biotic component in the ecosystem. Okay, 10 marks. So try to remember what we have discussed just now about the biotic components. Okay, so basically you just need to remember about what is actually the biotic component. What is actually the biotic component? And remember, the biotic component is actually referring to the living organisms. Okay, the living organisms found in a particular ecosystem. So this can get you 1 mark. And if you give a brief definition about what is the biotic component. Okay, and then you can continue with the different types of living organisms. Okay, that can be found in a particular ecosystem. You can mention about the autotrophs. Okay, and also the heterotrophs. Okay, try to give a brief definition of the autotrophs and also a brief definition for the heterotroph. Okay, and so the autotrophs are known also as the producers, okay, which can be divided into the autotrophs, okay, and also the autotrophs. Okay, you can give examples of for these organisms. For example, the phototrophs will be the plants, the algae. Chemoautotrophs will be referring to some type of bacteria maybe. Okay, and then you can continue with the heterotrophs, in which the heterotrophs is usually known as the consumers, and the consumers for the ecosystem, and this can be further divided into several types. I think we have discussed about 5 types of heterotrophs just now. Okay, the first one will be the herbivores. Okay, you can give the definition for the herbivores, and you can also give the example, some example of the herbivores. Okay, the second one will be the carnivores. Okay, what are the carnivores, and what will be some example of the carnivores? And then the omnivores. Okay, example, and also the definition. And then it will be the detritivores. Detritivores, organism that eat dead matters. Example will be the earthworm. and finally will be the decomposers. Okay, the decomposers. Okay, example will be the bacteria and fungi. Okay, so you try to expand these points over here in order to get the 10 points for this essay number 2B, right? And we can also go about this essay question number 1B now. Okay, after talking about the biotic component, we have also talked about the interactions between the biotic components in an ecosystem. Okay, so for this essay number 1B, you just try to focus on the 5 types of interactions, okay, between the living organism. One will be the competition. Okay, number 2 will be the predation. Number 3 will be the parasitism. Number 4 will be the mutualism, and number 5 will be the commensalism. Okay, so when you state these 5 types of interactions, you will be getting 5 points already, and you just need to expand these points, maybe by giving a brief description or brief definition for each type of these interactions. Okay, for example, what is competition, what is predation, what is parasitism, what is mutualism, and what is commensalism. If you want, you can give one example for each type. Okay, so that will be for essay number 1B. Okay, hopefully you can do this essay, okay, because the points are very easy. And we can also go now to this essay number 1A. Okay, after talking about the components of the ecosystem, okay, we also have learned about the examples of ecosystems, and one of the example will be the lake ecosystem. So for this essay number 1A, you just need to divide the lake ecosystem into several zones. Basically, okay, this will be the main idea. Okay, the littoral zone, the limnatic zone. Number 3 will be the photic zone. Number 4 will be the aphotic zone, and an extra one, number 5, will be the benthic zone. Okay, so after stating all these zones, you try to describe about each of these zones. For example, what is the littoral zone? This will be referring to the area that is close to the lake shore, for example. Okay, and in the question, you also need to describe a little bit about the biotic component. So you can give examples of organisms found in the littoral zone. Example of the biotic component. Example of biotic component will be what? Aquatic plants. What else? Insects such as the water strider, and so on. Okay, so try to do the same thing for all these zones. Try to describe briefly what is the limnatic zone and what will be the examples of biotic component that can be found in the limnatic zone, and so on. Okay, so this essay is also relatively quite easy. Okay, so we have settled essay 1A and 1B, and maybe you can continue with this essay number 2A, okay, by giving the meaning of a grazing food chain. Okay, what is actually the grazing food chain? Refer to the notes again. And what will be the types of grazing food chain? There are 2. there are two types of grazing food chain that you need to remember. One will be the predatory food chain, okay, which involves predators, and another one will be the parasitic food chain. Okay, so try to explain first what is the grazing food chain, and then you try to mention these two. Okay, and then the second part will be why is the trophic level in the grazing food chain usually limited to 4 or 5 only. Okay, 4 or 5 only. So basically the idea is because energy is lost. Energy will be lost when the energy is being transferred from one trophic level to another trophic level to another trophic level. Okay, you can refer to the notes in page, you can refer to your notes page 45. Okay, in which you can see why the trophic levels is usually less than 5. So from the notes, you try to come out with the points to tackle this essay number 2A. Okay. Okay. Before we continue with the essay number 3, maybe we can try to do these structured questions. Okay, concerning subtopic 2.1 and 2.2, and I will start with this structured question number 1. Okay, about the food web. The food web, we can see there are many interconnected food chains over here. Okay, and what will be the type of food chain that constitutes the food web shown in figure 1? Okay, what is the type of food chain? So you should notice that this is a type of detritus food chain. Okay, can you see why? All because of the first trophic level over here. The first trophic level is the leaf litter, which is actually referring to the dead matters, the detritus. Leaf litter will be referring to the dead leaves. Okay, and so since this will be a type of dead matter, a type of detritus, so the food chain will be the detritus food chain. Okay, so that is the explanation. Okay, the type of food chain will be the detritus food chain. So give your explanation. The explanation is because of this. And so what is the explanation behind this answer? You just look at this particular diagram, and you will notice that this food web begins with the leaf litter. The food web begins with the leaf litter, which is a type of detritus. Okay, got that? Try to write your own statements over here. Okay, what is the maximum number of trophic levels for the food web? You need to find the type of food chain that involves the most type of organisms. So maybe this will be the first trophic level, the leaf litter, and this can be the second trophic level. This can be the third trophic level. This can be the trophic level number 4, and this will be the trophic level number 5. I think this is the most number of trophic levels that we can find in this particular food web. Okay, boleh? Okay, what about this one? Trophic level number 1, trophic level number 2, trophic level number 3, number 4 only. So I think this is the most number of trophic levels that we can get from this food web. Yang paling banyak. Right? So the answer is 5. Okay, no need to give any explanation. Okay. B, part 1. What is an autotroph? What is an autotroph? So basically an autotroph will be referring to organisms that can produce its own organic compound. Okay, that can produce its own organic compound from inorganic material. Okay, I think that is a very popular definition. You can find that type of definition in most books. Okay, I will continue now with this question B part 2. Name the trophic level occupied by the autotroph. Okay, name the trophic level occupied by the autotroph. So usually the autotroph or the producer will always be found in the trophic level number 1. Okay, so the answer will be the first. The first one lah. The first trophic level. Okay, because the autotrophs are normally the producers. Producers are always located at the first level in a particular food chain. Okay. The formation of new tissues by autotrophs does not use all of the absorbed sunlight. Okay, why? Why there is loss of energy? Okay, at this level. At this level means between the sun and the autotroph. Some of the energy will be lost. Okay, some of the energy will be lost. Okay, so we can say that because energy will be lost, energy will be lost. Energy will be lost. Maybe in the form of heat. Okay. In the form of heat energy. So heat during the process of maybe respiration. Yeah, because the plants perform respiration, and the plant also perform this process known as transpiration. Do you remember about this transpiration? The loss of water from the plants. So as water is lost from the plants, heat energy will be lost as well. So this will be the two process that will result in the loss of energy, okay, by the plants. Okay, give one example of a decomposer. This is a very popular question. A very popular question. So I think I've told you before this that the example of decomposers will be the bacteria. Okay, or you just need to give one. But if you don't want to give this particular answer, then you can choose this as your answer. Okay, fungi. Either one. E. Name two processes involved in the release of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So I think we all know that when the living organisms perform the process of respiration, particularly cellular respiration, okay, this will release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So respiration will be the most popular answer. Okay, respiration, in which oxygen will be used and carbon dioxide will be released into the atmosphere. Respiration. Other than the respiration process, okay, carbon dioxide can also be released through the process of combustion. Okay, combustion. This will be referring to the process where some organic material will be used, okay, to the process of burning maybe, okay, and this will release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Okay, another option, if you don't want to choose this combustion, okay, you can also give another one, decomposition. Decomposition that might be performed by the bacteria or the fungi also release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So you have three options. Choose only two. Choose only two. Right? Okay, we will continue now with the structured question number 3 about the lake ecosystem. Okay, in which you need to label zone 1, zone 2, zone 3 and zone 4. Okay, so I'm sure you know that zone 1 will be referring to the area close to the lake shore. So zone 1 should be the littoral zone. Okay, meanwhile zone 2 will be further away from the lake shore, further away. Start from here. Zone 2 start from here, okay, further away from the lake shore, towards the middle of the lake. So we can see that zone 2 will be the limnatic zone. Okay, what about zone 3? Zone 3 I think is referring to the area which is in the deeper parts of the lake, which does not get any light. So I think zone 3 will be referring to the aphotic zone, the aphotic zone. Meanwhile, zone 4 will be referring to the area, okay, at the bottom part of the lake. So this will be referring to the benthic zone. Okay, very easy. Okay, hopefully your answers are all correct. And so, which zone has the highest distribution of photosynthetic organism? The highest one. Okay, we should know that there will be many aquatic plants at the littoral zone. Okay, but on the surface of the limnatic zone, there are also a lot of phytoplanktons, okay, that can also perform photosynthesis process. So in terms of the number of organisms, in terms of the number of photosynthetic organisms between the littoral zone and the limnatic zone, I think limnatic zone will be even more, because the number of phytoplanktons will be more than the number of aquatic plants in the littoral zone. Okay, so which zone has the highest distribution of the photosynthetic organism? The answer should be the zone number 2. Okay, you can give your answer as zone 2, or if you are confident, you can give the full term for this zone number 2, the limnatic zone. Either one. It is okay if you just give zone 2, it is still considered as correct. Okay, 1 mark for this one. And explain as I told you just now, because there will be a lot more of phytoplanktons on the surface of the limnatic zone. Or you can also say because this is the largest area. Okay, this is the largest area with the most sunlight. Okay, with the most sunlight penetration. Okay, so since the limnatic zone is an open area, okay, and the surface area is larger compared to the littoral zone, so all the phytoplanktons will be able to perform photosynthesis without any problem, and so the distribution of the photosynthetic organisms, specifically referring to the phytoplanktons, will be even more over here. Okay, and we continue now with the question 2C. Which of the zone has the richest diversity of organisms? Richest diversity means different types. Okay, many different types of organisms. So between zone 1, 2, 3 and 4, okay, most of the organisms will be over here. in which we can find a lot of different types of aquatic plants. There will be different types of animals as well, the insects, the frogs, the snails, okay, even some type of protozoa and so on. So the zone number 2, no, the zone number 1 will be considered as the richest, will be showing the richest diversity of organism. So the answer will be zone 1. Or if you are confident, you can give the full term, and that will be the littoral zone. So give your explanation why. Because zone 1 has the highest number of microhabitats actually. Has the highest number of microhabitats. Okay, I repeat. Okay, why the littoral zone has got the richest diversity of organism? Because the littoral zone or zone 1 has the highest number of micro habitats. Banyak tempat tinggal kat situ. Okay, di atas pokok, di tepi-tepi stem pokok tersebut, di permukaan air, di dalam air, di atas tanah. So banyak. There are many micro habitats actually over here. Okay, and so when there are many different habitats over here, there will be many different types of organisms living in this littoral zone, the zone number 1. Okay, that is basically the reason lah, the reason for choosing zone 1. Okay, and using these organisms over here, try to construct a food web consisting of at least 4 trophic levels. So I think that you can try to do this on your own. Maybe we can start with the producer. Okay, what will be the producer? Try to identify the producers. Paddy can become an example of producer. And apart from that, algae can also become a type of producer. So you can start from these two. Okay, from these two producers, try to expand, try to make several food chains which can be interconnected with each other to perform a very complicated, a very complex food web of this. Okay, so try to do this on your own. And I will go now to the structured question number 3. Okay, structured question number 3 about a food chain in the lake ecosystem. So what is an ecosystem? What is an ecosystem? So in the notes, okay, you should find something about a community that consists of the living organisms together with the non-living physical environment and also their interaction. So basically, in your definition, you should mention about the living organisms, okay, the biotic component, plus the non-living physical environment. This will be referring to the abiotic component and also the interactions. Okay, the interaction between the living organism and also the interaction between the living organism and their non-living physical environment. Okay, try to make this into a full statement. Okay, we'll continue now with this part 2, in which we need to refer to this food chain shown in figure 3. And this is a food chain, and the question asks about the organism that provide the largest energy amount. The largest amount of energy should always should always be found in the producer. Always the producer. And so the producer in this food chain will be the first type of organism in the first profit level. So the answer will be this one, the phytoplankton. Okay, phytoplankton. Okay, is that easy? Yeah, this is very easy. Let me write this properly. The phytoplanktons. Okay. Name the ecological pyramid that can be designed based on figure 3. Okay, so we should remember that there are 3 types of ecological pyramids. The pyramid of number, the pyramid of biomass, and the pyramid of energy. So which one can be constructed from the information in figure 3? Okay, so what is given here is not the amount of energy. What is given here is not about the number of organisms. This shows the amount of biomass for each of the organisms in the profit levels. So I guess the type of ecological pyramid will be the pyramid of biomass. Okay, very clear? And so you try to draw this particular pyramid of biomass based on this figure number 3. How many profit levels? 1, 2, 3. So you should have 3 boxes. Okay, 3 boxes in your pyramid of biomass. Okay, and so the size of the box for the second profit level should be the biggest one. The biggest one. Okay, this will be the smallest one, the fish. Okay, and so when you try to do this pyramid of biomass, okay, remember 3 boxes. We will start with the phytoplankton at the bottom, the producer. Okay, but the biomass of the zooplankton will be more than that. So the box will be bigger, something like this. Okay, I'll try to draw it properly. And meanwhile, for the third profit level, the fish, the biomass is the smallest one. So you try to do a smaller box for the fish. Okay, so there should be 3 boxes arranged like this, and we try to label the boxes by writing the names of the organisms. So this one will be the phytoplankton, this one will be the zooplankton, well, this one will be the fish. And since this is a biomass, the pyramid of biomass, you should also write down the amount of biomass for each level. Okay, so for the phytoplankton, it will be 40 gram per meter cubic. Okay, what about the zooplankton? Okay. What about the fish? 17 gram per cubic. Okay, based on the information that we get from this figure number 3. Okay, so this will be the idea for your pyramid of biomass. And then for part 5, why does the value of phytoplankton in figure 3 is lower? Why does the value of phytoplankton in figure 3 is lower than that of the zooplankton? Because why does the biomass for the phytoplankton is always lower than the biomass of the zooplankton? Because basically the size, okay, the size of phytoplankton is always smaller than the size of the zooplankton. I think this is mentioned in the notes. The size of phytoplankton okay, is always smaller than the size of zooplankton. So basically, a smaller size will be having a smaller amount of biomass. That is the basic concept lah. So zooplankton is larger. That is why the biomass for the zooplankton should be more. Okay. Part B. Okay. So 3 trophic levels in the grassland ecosystem. You need to calculate the percentage of energy decrease between the producer and the herbivores. Between the producer and the herbivore. The producer is this one. Okay, and the herbivores is one. So we are trying to calculate the loss of energy. Okay, between these two. So what you can do is how much energy is less energy decrease. We start with the energy decrease. That will be 5,000. This one minus 130. 130. Okay. And I think you should write also the unit. The unit for this energy, it should be kilojoule. Kilojoule per meter square. Okay, you should write the unit as well, and so you calculate this one and you will get the answer, which is 4870. Okay, kilojoule per meter square. Okay, and then try to get the percentage now. The percentage. So the percentage will be the percentage of energy decrease, okay, between the producer and the herbivore will be 4870 divided with the energy in the producer, which is 5,000, and you times with 100. Okay, try to get the answer. Okay, how many percent? Try to calculate on your own. Okay, so why is there a decrease of energy? Kenapa memang ada hilang energy? From 5,000 jadi 130 only. Why? Why is there a decrease in energy? Because energy is lost. Okay, because energy is always lost. Energy is lost when being transferred, okay, from one profit level to another profit level. Okay, you can continue with that, and you can continue by stating the process that can causes the loss of energy. Okay, you can continue through the process of respiration, maybe. Okay, respiration, transpiration, excretion, maybe. Try to give a few. Okay, and so on. So that is why energy is decreased from the first profit level to the second profit level, right? Okay, so I think we will stop here. Okay, later we will talk about the questions concerning the biogeochemical cycle. Okay, and finally there will be questions concerning the last subtopic, okay, for this topic of ecology. So I will continue with some other video after this. Okay, bye bye.